Hey, Steve Saretsky here. As always, this is the Friday recap video. So basically every Friday coming to you, recapping Canadian real estate with the focus on Vancouver. If you like these videos, thumbs up, subscribe. But yeah, again, basically come back here every Friday. I'm going to recap anything that sort of might impact the market, anything Canadian real estate related, from a global macro perspective. Again, really anything that you need to be paying attention to. I'm going to bring it here on Fridays and recap that. First off, everything that, again, I've a lot of the stuff that I mentioned, graphs, stuff that go with it below in the description. One of the prevailing things that I continue to harp on is the psychological effect of financial markets, particularly, in Vancouver, Toronto real estate, things that we've seen over the last couple of years. As I've mentioned, with the foreign capital starting to dwindle, call it whatever you want, call it for various reasons. You've actually seen for the first time since 2009, London home prices actually fell. So it's not just Vancouver, it's these global markets that have a heavy reliance on foreign capital coming in. Obviously with the Chinese capital controls, these high-end luxury markets are feeling the pinch, and that's the same thing in Vancouver. You have basically right now what is driving the market is first-time buyers. It's a lot of local investors. That condo market right now is pushing up, and you have the high-end luxury homes that are starting to push down, and it's sort of everything else is sort of in between. And so it's really interesting because that gap between condos and single-family homes is it's never been so narrow. Again, because the price of these one bedrooms are just getting absolutely just driven up. Something that's very interesting, it was on the news, is a pre-sale development in Port Coquitlam. Like I said, this is sort of the mindset, that fear of missing out, where as prices go up, people start to spread out into the suburbs, into other areas that, again, normally where condo prices are generally flat. You can build a lot of condos, there's lots of available land. Those prices start to go up, and so Port Coquitlam, the average typical condo price, the benchmark, is up 26% on a year-over-year basis. And there was a condo development in Port Coquitlam that people were camping out for 3 nights. They set up their tents, camping out for 3 nights, trying to get into these pre-sales. Just hearing the people's stories about they just wanted to get into the market, and realtors are standing in line, other buyers standing in line for 3 days. People were being paid, UBC students were being paid $400 a day to go and stand in line and wait for them, which is just it's just crazy. That's just the mentality that's out there, right? I don't know if I think I mentioned this in a video last week, but a condo that I was looking at for a client in the Wally area, North Surrey, a 1-bedroom unit came on the market. First day on the market, 6 offers, multiple offers, way over asking, canceled the open house. That's just what's happening in that condo market is just so much psychological right now. And it's the same thing in the project, some of you might have heard of it, Second in Maine. It's in Mount Pleasant. They released sort of a preliminary scale in terms of what, they're saying studios will start at mid 500s, 2 bedrooms will be sort of mid 900s, but they haven't actually released official prices. They had a presentation center on the weekend. It was lined up out the door, talking to the sales rep. She's basically, she's people are coming with $20,000 deposit checks in hand, and they don't even know the prices. And she's basically, if your clients want one, they basically have to submit. She's we probably won't be able to get you a 1-bedroom. There's just so much demand for them. And then same thing with 2 bedrooms. You can try. We'll basically pull your name out of a hat and hope for the best. But she's basically, she's yeah, this isn't a kick your tire thing. You bring your deposit check, and these people don't even know what the prices are, but they're they're putting their hand up and saying, I want it. So like, to me, again, that's sort of like, okay, like you guys don't even know the price and you're just gonna like, you don't even care what the price is, like just buy at any price. And again, this is like something that just look at pre-sales. You know, Mount Pleasant asking this development charging about $1,400 a foot. You can buy into a 1-year-old building, 2-year-old building in that Mount Pleasant area for about $1,100 a foot today. So in order for that to be feasible, the development, when it's finished in 3 years, you basically have to hope for prices to continue to increase about 10% each year. 10, 10, 10, in order for you to basically resell at market value to basically break even. Could it go up more? Sure, absolutely. But could it not? I think that's a very realistic scenario. We've already had price growth in Vancouver condos of about 25, 30, about 30% over the last 2 years. So 30% in 2016 and 2017. So we've already had just this unprecedented massive increase in prices. Is it going to have another 30% leg up? I mean, it's certainly possible, but you think when you have that much price growth, you would have to imagine at some point you have a pullback. I guess you can make the argument that if they're flogging a lot of these overseas, which they are, you know, it's still cheap in Hong Kong value-wise, you know, for a similar condo there. Like, it's really just about, and like people always ask me, you know, well, what should I do? Should I buy? Should I sell? Like, I can't really make that decision for you, even from like a liability standpoint. It's really like just here's the facts, here's what's happening in the market, and like you basically have to like navigate and make up your own mind. But again, this is just very interesting from like a, you know, a psychological perspective. So shifting gears, I'm gonna basically come back to this. I'm just going to touch on a couple other things. The Bank of Canada came out with their latest sort of speech. After 2 interest rate hikes, they basically sort of pulled back. Obviously, you had the Canadian dollar going up, bond yields as well, and so they're basically trying to pull it back in, saying, oh, we don't know what the future holds for rate increases. We have to continue to look at the data. This is essentially a rudderless ship where they don't know what to do. Interest rates have been so low for so long that you're in this unprecedented territory where a lot of their strong economic data is tied to real estate. So they have to really continue to watch those markets. I got the sense that it seems like they're not going to be a rate hike in October. I would say if they get one more in, it might happen before the end of the year. Like, I don't know. But the sense that came out, obviously the Canadian dollar fell after it, was that there won't be a hike in October. So that'll be interesting. I still think the stress test is going to come in. So again, that's sort of another thing that potentially plays out. And basically coming back to this and everything that I do, you know, putting out this video, putting out the blogs, it's not so much about like myself or like my business. It's about really like, you know, obviously growing my personal brand, you know, creating that transparency. It's really just about providing like value to you guys watching, and you know, just seeing all the stuff that's out there sort of like in mainstream, right? Or like the stuff that sort of gets doesn't get exposed, or like, you know, because everyone has sort of like that vested interest. And one of the financial media sites that I've subscribed to is Real Vision. Like, I highly recommend. I think they've completely broken down sort of those barriers. Like, if you want like unbiased like financial news, like not so much on real estate, but like on stocks and basically the economies, is they basically like they're not funded by anyone. Like, there's just they just sell you subscriptions. That's it on the information. They interview like all these hedge funds and they give like so many different various views. And so I think that's very interesting. And like, I almost like want to do that for the real estate side. It's just like, hey, you know what, here's the information. Like, you can interpret it how you wish, and make your decision. But like, it's interesting because, you know, Sotheby's came out a week ago, and this is something I talked about, where they released a report saying that, you know, luxury homes in Vancouver were starting to pick up. It was heating back up, and They were saying that foreign buyers are just exploding in Montreal. Like, it's like the next, like, basically just trying to drive up, like, I felt like they was trying to drive up like a fear of missing out. Like, let's, you know, because like the underlying data simply wasn't there. If you actually look, I put out a post on this. Sales in Vancouver above $1 million, you know, luxury, are down. They're down about 18%. Like, the volume's down. And it's really the higher you go, the softer the market is. Again, it's that condo market, the low end, really driving things up, and you have the higher end market, which is soft. So they come out with that, and then, you know, and then Remax came out with a report, I believe, today or yesterday, counteracting that, and they basically came out and said, oh, you know, like, luxury homes in Vancouver and Toronto, like, above $3 million, like, the sales are down about 30%, buyers are waiting. And then they pulled the report. It was online for about 2 hours. The media started redistributing it, obviously, like all the big media sites. And then they all of them at once basically pulled the article. And from what I'm hearing, or from what I understand, is like Remax basically said, like, they pulled it, and then all these other sites pulled down the article. But again, you can find that cached article. I actually just tweeted it out. So, like, I don't know. Like, is it a conspiracy? Like, I don't know. But I think it's just extremely interesting. And then you have the Toronto Real Estate Board. Again, like, I don't know. I know Vancouver does a monthly report saying, you know, here's all the stats, here's what's happening. Toronto was basically doing a monthly report plus a mid-month report on the sales numbers. They've now, in the last month, they said, we're not doing mid-months anymore. Like, all of a sudden, after, I guess, years of doing this, they're cutting it out. They're saying, man, we're not going to do it anymore. No more mid-month reports. So it's a very interesting time to go silent when you have a lot of people paying attention to the market, a lot of people trying to figure out what's going on, what's happening, and you know, you basically cut out that service. Again, it's really interesting. And just like from my perspective, obviously someone that helps out, works with the media a lot, you know, those calls, you know, back in like the heyday, right? Like, you'd be getting calls every single day, like, hey, what's going on? We want to write a story, And we've slowly seen, from a media reporting standpoint, is like nobody sort of wants to talk. Like, they're still obviously talking about it, but like the stories on real estate are slowly dying off, and it's almost like everyone's sort of going like silent, like hush hush. And so, like, for me, like, I mean, the calls have just completely dropped off. It seems like nobody really wants to talk about Vancouver real estate too much. It's just kind of like, meh. And, you know, what's interesting is I've talked about this from, like, from that behavior standpoint, whether it's a fear of missing out, the amount of emotions that are created in these financial markets that really drive things. Again, like, what causes Port Coquitlam and condo prices to rise 26% and people to camp out for 3 days straight because there's, like, everyone's like, I gotta get in. You know, people reading headlines, like, prices continue to rise. So, like, it's just so emotional. Like, you know, again, what causes 6 offers in a Wally in a market that's normally dead quiet to happen in one day. And this is something I've referenced quite a bit, is it's Robert Shiller's Irrational Exuberance book, and he's the Nobel Prize winning economist. Really does a little bit of talking on the mindset that really drives these asset bubbles or markets, whatever you want to call them. You know, basically, and it's the same thing, right? It's like that positive feedback loop. I mean, he talks about it in his book here, but basically, I don't know if you can see that, but it's this chart here where basically as prices rise, whether it's in the stock market or real estate, the amount of people that agree if there's a crash, the market will be right back up, or if prices dip, the prices will go back up. It goes along with the prices. So as the actual price drops, now people's confidence in the market also drops, and that's why, you know, you see, like, in Vancouver, haven't really had like a massive, obviously, correction, but like in 2009, like, nobody's buying all of a sudden. Like, the time to buy in 2009 was in 2009. Like, that's, you know, prices are going down 15, 20, like 10, 15%. But it's like it's psychology, right? And it's the same thing he actually talks about. Is studied where, you know, in the stock market and stuff, they basically went back and they compiled how many news headlines were coming out, how many news articles were written about this particular asset class. So like take the stock market, for example. He basically compiled all the data for how many articles happened in that particular couple years for the stock market, or real estate. I think he's gotten there as well, where you have all these headlines coming out, and then as like the market corrects, as it sort of tapers off, slows down, you have an actual drop off of news articles and headlines with it as well. I mean, again, it's very interesting. Look into it, interpret it how you wish. For me, I just am fascinated by the human behavior aspect. And that's really all I got. So I'm going to continue to keep coming back here, providing you with the data, the insights, again, whatever the market's doing, whether it's going up, down, sideways. Check back in a couple days. I'm going to, obviously this is the weekly Friday video, but here we are at the end of the month. So I'm going to do a market update video for the September numbers. That'll be out in a couple days. Same thing on my site. I usually put the data, the blog out first. So if you want sort of ahead of the video, go to my site, vancitycondoguide.com, and then I'll have all these September numbers for the detached market as well as the condo market. So that will come out again before the Friday recap video. So you'll have this next couple days, you'll have a market update video, and then again we'll stay on par with our regular scheduled programming is the Friday recap video. Anyways, hope that helped. Hope you found it interesting. If you did, thumbs up, subscribe, always appreciate that, and we'll talk soon.